How long does grieving last? I asked myself every single day for almost 3 years since my wife disappeared, and I never got an answer. The reminder that I was alone came every time I woke up and went to bed. Eventually, the reality sets in, and I start to get used to eating alone, brushing my teeth alone, grocery shopping alone, and just being alone. I thought enough time had passed that I didn't have to ask myself that question anymore until the day I got a phone call from the nursing team who took care of my mother-in-law. Denise, the old lady, was planning on moving herself into a nearby nursing home, but now it sounds like she had too passed. When I arrived at their home, I was met by one of the nurses who had taken care of Denise. She tried to leave quickly, not wanting to stay around the house long. We had a small conversation about where everything was in the home, and how most of the things inside were packed up and ready for storage, and then were given a set of keys for the house, each labeled with the rooms inside. I tried to ask for more details, but all the nurse gave me was a passing chuckle as she turned to go to her car, getting inside and driving away without another word. It was a reasonable response when it involved anything that had to do with Denise. The old lady was going on 80 and was unbearable to be around. The last time I had spoken to her, most of our conversation was loud coughing and nonsense. The old house smelled like a hospital. Cardboard boxes were stacked randomly around the home, with a thin layer of dust blanketing each surface. The TV and larger furniture stayed unpacked, only covered in a layer of plastic wrap. I was married to my wife for 5 years before she vanished, and I don't recall ever being in her childhood home. The old house sat in a suburban row of homes, all facing away from the tree line leading into the dense woods of the Pacific Northwest. I stuffed the keys into my pockets and carefully squeezed between the stacked boxes. Small framed pictures of my wife at various ages still hung along the walls and sat across the small coffee table. I guess Denise wanted to take these in her bag, or maybe, like me, it was difficult to let her go. With no one left in the family, the responsibility fell on me to take care of what was left of their belongings. I figured I would get the boxes to storage and clean the rest of the house before deciding what to do with it. I loaded a couple into my car, staring at the dishes and kitchenware before stumbling on a pile of boxes with her name written across them. Gwen. I read to the silent house with a long, deep breath. I carried the boxes to the coffee table and opened them. Inside were articles of clothing, old bound notebooks, photo albums, and school memorabilia. I flipped through them, and seeing her on every page brought tears. Her smile lit up each sun-faded page, and each wood frame she was captured in threatened to set on fire with her warmth. These boxes were going to stay with me. I dried my tears and kept going, wanting to see more of her. I moved away a pile of old clothes and notebooks when my hand met something hard and hollow. Buried at the bottom of one of the boxes were a hefty bag of small CDs and a handheld video camera. I pulled them out and immediately went to turn it on. Unsurprisingly, the old thing wouldn't turn on, and the battery compartment was corroded shut with the old batteries still inside. I wrestled with it in the kitchen with a butter knife and got it opened and cleaned, then with the double A's from the TV remote, got the thing to switch on. I inspected the camera again, excited to get it working. and saw it had a name written in marker on the side, Gwen. I shuffled through the CDs, each labeled with a date, a few not. The first was for her 8th birthday. The small red-haired girl's face was right up in the camera lens, peering in with her bright steel blue eyes. She let out an excited squeal and ran to hug her parents, thanking her mom and dad for the expensive gift. I guess filmmaking had always been her passion. Her father responded with something unintelligible and a heavy cough before he left the frame. I had never met the man when he was alive, and she never talked much about him. A moment later, he returned with a big birthday cake, and then the three ate it together. The rest of the CD was just them eating before shutting off randomly. The old CDs didn't have that much storage, each having only about 20 minutes of memory. I spent the next few hours going through her childhood. Several moments in the videos I recall her telling me about. Late nights when we would lay in bed and talk until sunrise. Other moments, just small silly things a child with a video camera would film. Her father eventually showed up less and less in the videos, his cough worsening every time until he was no longer in them. For a long while, the videos stopped, a large year-long gap before I saw her face again. Her smiles were never the same, she talked less, and some videos were just her talking about her day to her father and writing silently in her notebooks. Eventually, the pile of memories grew smaller and smaller, and when I almost reached the end of the dated discs, I decided to take a look at one without any date on it. Heavy breathing interlaced with the crackle of the built-in microphone blasted through the tiny speakers, filling up the empty home more than everything else that night. The screen was dark with only a small light coming from the left corner of the video. The lens stuttered and focused. Eventually, I was able to make out a line of trees and a street light, but the image was still blurred. It stayed focused on the dark woods for another moment before the camera was pushed forward, hitting a glass surface before it struggled to focus once again. The heavy breathing of my wife still close to the microphone. I leaned in as if it would help the video focus, the blurry tree line being barely visible in the dark. Between the breaths of my wife, I could hear the camera force itself to focus, sharpening itself until the woods got steadily more and more visible. The camera stayed like that for 18 minutes, glued in position, and so did my wife. My eyes stayed trained on the trees, just like she was in the video, watching for any movement at all, only leaving the tree line to check the timer on the video. It got to 19 minutes, and then as it slowly reached its end, something shifted in the trees. The video ended, blinding me with the harsh blue menu of the settings screen. Immediately, I replaced the disc with another unmarked one. The next one was during the day. She stood just at the edge of the woods, camera raised and pointed towards the thick darkness created by the trees. The normally tranquil sounds of birds and nature in the background were sometimes interrupted by a heavy cough. Each time the camera fell for a moment, I imagined she tried to stifle her cough. I watched again to the end of this video, all 20 minutes of just the camera pointed into the woods, but nothing happened. The following 4 undated videos also showed nothing, just my wife at various points and locations around her house, filming the woods for 20 minutes. The audio was always just background noise, coughing, and the mechanical whirl of the camera's focus. On the last dated one, I could see her reflection in the window as she filmed. She sat in the kitchen, the camera pointed towards the window above her sink, and the tree line beyond her yard. She was probably about 15 or 16 at this point, looking just like the first time we had met in high school. The camera tried to focus again on the woods, zooming between her reflection and the tree line. She let out another cough, this time just a brief one, and then opened a bottle of pills, swallowing them dry before letting the camera roll to its end. I had run out of CDs. I stood from my spot on the ground and turned towards the kitchen window. It was now nighttime, making the darkness of the tree line even more oppressing than it was a few moments earlier on the screen. I stood and stared for a moment like she did, trying to scan the dark with my eyes, but the trees stayed the same. With a shudder, I pulled the blinds down to shut the window and made my way back with the help of my phone light. There were no more videos. I carelessly dumped out the rest of the boxes with her name on them across the floor and found nothing. Realizing what I'd done to what I had left of my wife, I started to mournfully repack her items neatly in the boxes when I accidentally kicked something across the ground. Her notebooks. I picked them up and laid them across the coffee table. There were only 3 of them. One of them a locked toy Barbie notebook that I wasn't going to get open unless I smashed the thing, and the other 2 old leather-bound style books. I carefully unwrapped the straps around them and flipped through the weathered pages, mostly filled with bits of writing and drawings. Across the 2 available notebooks, her art style visibly improved, and she wrote less and less. Like the videos, the drawings were about her and her parents. Unfortunately, they were almost exactly like the videos, chronicling and recording how ill her father eventually got, more and more ill. The drawings and entries transitioned from them getting ice cream, hiking, and summer barbecues to hospital visits, sitting on their back porch and looking into the woods. Then it was just the woods. The second half of her 3rd notebook was just pages and pages of the trees and nothing more until the last 2 pages. The graphite of the pencil was aggressively forced into the paper, splaying out an image of the tree line into the last 2 pages of her notebook. I ran my fingers along each tree and could feel them etched into the page. The black powder left behind by her pencil so long ago still stained my fingertips. In the middle of the page, done by what I assumed was an eraser trying to remove the forest from the notebook, stood a gaunt figure towering over the trees. I closed the notebooks and set them back in the box, and sealed them once again. I turned on every light in the house, first the entire ground floor, before making my way to the upstairs. I wanted to snuff out every single dark corner of this home to chase away a fear I refused to acknowledge. I shifted through the keychain in my pocket, entered every room, and turned on every light until I reached the locked door at the end of the hallway. I had 1 key left, one with her name written on the small tag that clung to it, Gwen. 2 times the keys fell out of my hands until I finally got them into the lock. It didn't click like the rest of the doors, but instead the lock turned with a rusted and sticky scrape. I thought Denise was joking when she said she had left my wife's room the same as the day she left and never opened it, but I realize now that she was telling the truth. I coughed hard as I pushed on the door. It took an agonizing amount of force to open, and as it did, it pushed something across the floor, sending dust from on top of the doorframe down on my head. My hand reached for where the light switch should be, but couldn't find anything. I opened the door wider so that the light from the hallway could spill into the room enough for me to see. Her desk was stacked with at least 100 of the same leather-bound notebooks she had in her box, the strap barely holding them close as they were stuffed with extra sheets of paper. Scattered across the ground were even more of them, their pages ripped out. Moonlight tried to enter the room through the window, but was forced back by something covering the glass. I took out my phone to shine its light across the walls to see where the ripped pages went. Across every surface possible were drawings of the woods,